Hello YouTube, this is Captain Omni, and I'm coming at you with another fanfiction concept, and as you can tell by the, if not by the picture, then by the title, this is Hellsing Monsters. Now, I might you be thinking, okay, well, doesn't Hellsing already deal with monsters, vampires and the like, and there was a werewolf in there too? Well, yes, but the idea here is, if Alucard is Dracula, then the basic idea is, what if there are other universal monsters involved, in Hellsing? So the basic idea setup is, Ceres still ends up, becoming, a vampire by Alucard. But there's some additions to the Hellsing compound. One of those is right in the picture right here. Frankenstein's monster, or as he goes by here, Adam. Now, granted, why Adam? Well, technically speaking, he never had a name in the original novel or most other versions, but he did refer to himself as the Adam of Dr. Frankenstein's creation. So it was like, okay, he's Adam here, and his basic thing is he is very much essentially Hellboy. He's snarky, he fights monsters, and the thing is, he is pretty much indestructible in the sense of, basically, he is a scientific miracle and a scientific abomination all at the same time. And the thing is, he can regenerate. If he's damaged, he can literally assimilate dead tissue into his body to make it live again and function for him. And he's super strong. He's technically physically stronger than Alucard. Of course, he's not quite as fast or as agile, but still, if he is a tank, he is an absolute tank. And the thing is, no one knows exactly. And I'm kind of leaning into the idea that, in the original, the modern Prometheus, aka Frankenstein, it was never really specified what Victor Frankenstein did in order to create his monster. So really here, I would really be playing into that with the idea that, he's basically no one but no one but Adam knows exactly, the exact details of how to create something like him, and, well, he's not telling. And of course, the thing is, he's also immune to vampirism because, well, to quote Alucard, his blood tastes like gasoline mixed with oil, so it's like mixed with oil and tar. So it's like, again, no one knows exactly how he came to be, but at the same time, it's like, he is, the Frankenstein's monster. He's essentially the Hellsing Organization's other heavy, so to speak. It's like, if Alucard's doing one thing, they'll send Adam in to take care of something else. And of course, he is Adam Frankenstein in the sense of, technically, Victor was his father, so, Adam Frankenstein. Next up would be and of course, Adam is also he's very, more or less, he's very much like Hellboy in the sense of, he's a smoker, mostly smokes because, well, he literally can't get lung cancer, and he likes the taste of a good cigarette, or stogie, pipe, whatever. And of course, which also leads to this, a funny little bit like Ceres is like, you shouldn't smoke, sir. I mean, that is terrible for your, and I was like, oh no, please, go on. I have to hear the rest of this. That kind of thing. So it's like, and of course, he's more good-natured than you might think, because usually, smarter versions of the monster end up being, very sullen and that kind of thing. Basically, at this point, he's learned to essentially appreciate life. He's more or less like, yeah, I'm undead. I'm pretty much have no real purpose outside of the purpose I choose to make, but then again, doesn't everyone? So he's kind of like, again, he'd be very much like Hellboy in that sense. Moving on, we would also have a brand new member, pretty much a lot like joining up roughly around the same time frame as Saris, and that would be one Larry Talbot. Here he would be an American who ended up, getting, inheriting an estate from his English relatives and in the Talbot estate, and would end up being attacked by a werewolf, which would actually belong to a Millennium here, but, essentially, he becomes a werewolf. And as it turns out, the Talbot line does have a long history of lycanthropy in it. So yeah, Larry Talbot is the Wolfman, and basically his whole thing is he is capable of, basically, unless it's silver, nothing's going to hurt him. He's fast, he's strong. He does eventually learn to somewhat control the transformation. Basically, he can transform any time he wants, but generally during the day it would mostly be just as a Wolfman, kind of like, the classic Wolfman. And at night it would be, he can become more bestial, kind of like the werewolves in the Van Helsing movie, which, say what you love that movie, the werewolf designs were pretty cool. And during the full moon, he absolutely loses all control, because it has to be pretty much locked up. But yeah, he's essentially drafted into the Hellsing Organization because, as Sir Integra puts it, we can either put you in the ground or you can work for us. So, because essentially, like, okay, we have a werewolf, that could be useful. So he's like, well, I did always want to do something in my life, because again, he's kind of, so he's not necessarily happy about the situation, but he's more or less resigned to it, Another member of this who would eventually actually end up, another member would actually be the Gill-Man. Now, the Gill-Man would not be. Now, I bet you're thinking, okay, if I made Frankenstein's monster Hellboy, does that mean I'm going to make the Gill-Man Abe Sapien? No, I am not. Basically, the Gill-Man is still pretty much an animal in the sense of, okay, it's still insanely intelligent. He is still insanely intelligent, but he would actually function more or less like, he doesn't speak. He would actually be somewhat similar to Snake Eyes and G.I. Joe in the sense of, okay, he never communicates verbally, but at the same time, it's like, you can tell what he's thinking. It's like, he has his likes, dislikes. Essentially, is like, his main thing is he's the last of his species and was found by the Hellsing Organization while investigating reports of missing people in, the Amazon, because I think, could this be vampires? I'm like, no, it's not vampires, it's a fish man. So, they pretty much take him, and basically his whole thing is, even though he doesn't talk, you kind of get this sense of there are things he actually does like to do. One of those is hunting. Like, the Gill-Man loves to hunt, put him in water. And of course, he's also useful in like operations where they need to essentially like get to vampires or other supernatural threats. But at the same time, they can't necessarily send Alucard because water. But, yeah, his thing is that, he does have insane regenerative capabilities because, Fishman. But at the same time, he can also breathe definitely underwater. And the longer he's underwater, he can essentially, like, adapt and grow into a larger, more bestial form. Essentially, he can kind of like almost become a sea monster almost, which is partly due to thanks to Hellsing scientists kind of experimenting on him and kind of like trying to boost his power. So yeah, now the main plot of this would essentially come around to being an archaeological team in Egypt ends up unearthing a tomb, and that tomb would belong to one Imhotep. Now, the whole thing is, I would kind of be doing the whole Brendan Fraser mummy movie thing where it's like, okay, he had a love and was mummified for it, but the thing is, he wasn't placed under a curse, he was just mummified, alive, but with his dying breath, he pledged his soul to Set, who essentially, if anyone ever releases him, which essentially, while it didn't stop him from getting mummified alive, it would essentially, if he's ever released, he would have the powers of Set behind him, and he would, be able to, and essentially, so he would pretty much be able to, be a walking plague, essentially, sandstorms, that kind of thing, have the powers of Set. And this, incidentally, ends up making him, essentially, the ancient Egyptian equivalent to Alucard. In the sense of, in terms of overall power, he is pretty much on par with Alucard. Yeah, but with one key difference. Holy weapons do not work on him. Silver, holy weapons, no, they don't work on him because, first of all, he's from ancient Egypt, and the thing is, he's pretty much, he is getting his powers from a god. So, the whole thing is, the whole thing is, that, and no, he does not join the Hellsing Organization. He actually ends up running the show at Millennium, mostly because they get wind of this guy, of him in Egypt, and they go there first. They think they can control him. That does not go so well, so they're like, well, I guess we're working for a mummy now. The major's like, well, I guess we're working for a mummy now. Well, why not? The Egyptians hated the Jews too. So, that kind of thing. So it's sorry, a bit of water there. And, of course, here, Millennium also has another monster on their side, and that would be Dr. Adrian Griffin, a.k.a. the Invisible Man. Now, the thing here is, he essentially, now, there is no serum here, but the thing is, Griffin ended up using both a serum and a machine to essentially make himself made of protoplasm. He's essentially a ghost, a being of solid protoplasm. He can disappear, he can, completely make himself invisible. You can't see him with infrared, you can't see him with infrared, you can't see him with night vision, got anything, you can't smell him, you can't do anything, you can't detect him. The only way you can detect him is through sound, and even then he has he's muffled sound, really muffled sound. You need heightened hearing to hear him. And the thing is, he does at some point adapt to be able to even mask his sounds. So essentially, he is the Invisible Man. He's truly the most invisible of invisible men. And he's working for Millennium. Why? Well, he was everyone, as we all know, the Invisible Man is essentially perhaps one of the world's first supervillains, in as far as fiction goes, superpowered and a complete lunatic. So yeah, he's basically thrown in with Millennium and Imhotep because, well, this is gonna be the winning team. And, why not? So, yeah, so that's essentially it. It's Hellsing and their monsters versus the Millennium, as led by Imhotep, the mummy, and with backup from the Invisible Man. Of course, I debated having Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in here, but, I might save that for a sequel story after this, because unlike Hellsing, I could see this, because Alucard and everyone does have a bit more backup than the main story. Let's just say I could see the series ending going a little bit different with how the battle with Millennium goes. So yeah, anyway, this has been Captain Omni, and I hope you guys like this, and I'll comment below, let me know, and I will see you later. This is Captain Omni, signing off.